stick around, and you did, and this is why we love you, Expresso family. We have to get into this very important conversation because the general elections are drawing nearer and nearer. 2024 is a big year for the country, and we need to be in the know of all of these different kinds of changes, huh? The anticipation is palpable, and this is also because we no longer have a 2 ballot paper system. We've got a 3 ballot paper system. But the person who is here to help us understand this a little bit better, and also more than anything else, come out feeling confident when we go out to vote, it is, of course, Kaya Sitole, who is a chartered accountant as well as a politics and economics speaker. Hello, Kaya.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, and you?
I'm good, thank you. Kaya, let's jump right into it because history is being made by South Africa yet again. 3 ballot paper system. You know, what does this mean for us, and what's your take on this historic development?
So historically, we've always had access to 2 ballots at the national election, which meant that you obviously were voting for the 400 members of the National Assembly, which we call the big parliament. And then there was also the question of who you wanted to run your province. So that was the provincial ballot.
Yeah.
So what happened is that at some point in time, there was a query that was raised about why is it that a person can only be a member of parliament if they belong to a particular political party.
Yeah.
And the answer was that actually there is a problem with that. So what the Constitutional Court then said in 2020 that actually it is unconstitutional to say that people can only participate as prospective members of parliament if they are part of a political party. It meant that if you want to do so as an independent candidate, you should be allowed to do so.
Sure.
So what the IEC has had to do over the past couple of years is to then figure out what is the one way in which you can then enable independents to actually participate in the election. Now, obviously, the biggest problem with being an independent candidate is that there's only one of you.
Yeah.
So the question of, well, actually, what happens if you pass away, for example, is still unresolved. So what the IEC then decided to do was to say, well, actually, when it comes to the 400 seats that you're voting for at the National Assembly, let us then split into 2. So the first ballot paper is exclusively limited to political parties.
Okay.
And they are essentially competing for 200 seats. So half of the seats in the national legislature are only being contested by political parties exclusively.
Yeah.
And then what the second ballot then says is that if there is an independent candidate who has met the threshold for actually, you know, as participating in this election as an independent candidate, then that person, you can decide to vote for them or not in the second ballot. So the second ballot is a blend of political parties and independents, which simply means that after the election, the IEC will say the first 200 seats exclusively for political parties, and then they'll obviously work out their own algorithms and their gimmicks to work out who gets what then.
Yes.
And then they'll come to the second ballot, and then they'll obviously say, well, within that particular ballot, these are the people that have emerged, and then obviously allocate the seats based on what happens in the second ballot. The third ballot is what we've always been used to, and that is the provincial ballot. So depending on the province that you live in, you can then get to decide who you want to govern that province. So that's really the big change that we've had since the last election.
And in your opinion, yes or no, is this a good thing for us?
I think it is a good thing, the fact that it obviously opens up the system for independent candidates to participate. But I think a lot of observers have found it quite disappointing that we essentially just have around 10 independent candidates who actually are contesting that. So one then has to question the question of the cost versus the benefit, because if you think of the logistics associated with creating a separate ballot altogether across the country, only for 10 candidates to actually, you know, stand with it's kind of a big cost-benefit analysis. But I think our constitution is one that says, well, actually, if people want to stand up and be elected into public office as independent candidates, they should be allowed to do so. So sometimes, obviously, the constitution does leave us with some of these particular challenges, and perhaps by the time we get to the 2029 general election, there will be an easier process of actually managing the costs of the logistics versus the right of independent candidates to stand.
Why didn't you go and be an independent candidate when I?
I'm very young, and as you've seen in Parliament, it's kind of a retirement village, so not ready for me.
Not a retirement village. You're going to get all of us into trouble, Kaya, which is why I just need to go on to the next question, which is why is this general election so important out of all the elections that we've had?
I think all elections have always been remarkably important, but what we're seeing here is that this is the one election where there's much more diversity in terms of party choices. So what we've also seen is that there's been this emergence of new parties that obviously are trying to speak to a new electorate. And when we say new electorate, it's people who've never voted before because they were too young. So those are the new voters. And it's also voters who've been of a voting age but have just never participated because they felt that perhaps the established parties just didn't resonate with them. So the big big idea behind this election is that you need to get as much participation as possible. And when we talk about this, perhaps reflecting the sentiments of 1994, in that in 1994 we wanted everybody to participate, wanted everybody to say, this is my opportunity to actually influence the outcomes of this general election. And of course, this year it is equally important for people to make their voices heard. And I think not only do we have the diversity of parties, perhaps the diversity of issues that people think should be tackled is quite important.
True.
So you're not going to find the perfect manifesto. So some parties have got manifestos that run into over 200 pages.
Yeah.
Others have got much shorter manifestos. And obviously, as a citizen, there will be a range of issues that you think need to be addressed and need to be tackled. But there's probably not going to be a perfect manifesto that addresses all of them. So you really just have to find the one that resonates closely with the type of issues that you want to champion. And perhaps this opportunity of having 3 separate ballots means that you can decide that, well, when it comes to national policy agenda, I think this is the party that speaks to it better. When it comes to the issues that are much closer to my jurisdiction in the provincial ballot, this is the party as the second party that speaks much closer to those issues. So you also have that opportunity as a voter to say, well, actually, I think there are particular issues that I want that party to tackle at that particular level. So therefore, I'm going to choose them here and I'm going to choose somebody else here.
Beautiful. Kaya, thank you for coming and enlightening us. We really do appreciate it, because some of us, we don't know. But the fact that we get to be educated by people like you, it means a lot. So thank you for waking up for us.
Go out and vote on the 29th of May.
There we go. You heard it right here on Expresso. Go out and vote on the 29th of May. Your vote deserves to be heard. And we all can't wait to see what comes from that day. With that being said, we do need to go over to Cape Town, because you and is standing by with the news headlines.